Hey, Danny. Thanks so
Hey,
much
how are
for
you?
good. Thank you so much for joining me today. You and I have known each other for a while, and you landed at LinkedIn, which is a really awesome company to be a
Yeah,
part of. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do with LinkedIn?
I can. It's funny actually. I was just going through some on my social media, and I saw it was 4 years ago. I think this week since we was in DC. At least that came up
Yeah,
on my as a reminder to me. So it's been a
crazy.
while. But yeah, I've been on LinkedIn for just over 2 years. Just celebrated my second anniversary a couple of weeks ago. Took on a new role here in November of last year. So working on a team that's known as a program sales team in the LinkedIn marketing sales division. So
Hmm.
essentially, my team partner with customers who are, I would say, relatively new to the platform as it
Hmm.
pertains to marketing spend. And we really want to help set them up for a long tail success on platform, right? So make sure
Hmm.
they are executing really strong with the basic fundamentals of what makes a quality campaign on LinkedIn, and ensure that they're getting what they need in terms of ROI, the number of leads they need, the quality of leads, and we partner with them over a 3 or 6 month period just to ensure that they are stable on platform moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. And that you really want to make sure that your clients and customers are getting the most they can out of the platform. I think we talked about this previously. Like social platforms can kind of be a crapshoot when it comes to putting um, campaigns together and making sure you're getting the value that you need to out of it. So it's really awesome that you partner with your
Yeah.
clients to make sure they're getting ROI. It's great.
It's hard, right? You get a self-serve platform, so that does present challenges in terms of sophistication level, familiarity with the platform. There's obviously confusions between the other self-serve platforms. They have nuanced ways that they work. So that's why my team was founded to help support those clients and make sure they can be successful.
Awesome. One of the things that I know we wanted to talk about today was ABM, and like that term is just thrown all over the
Yeah.
place right now. People talk about ABM and really what it is. And LinkedIn plays a really important part in having a successful ABM strategy, but it's kind of hard to make traction. So, what are some tips and tricks that you have for sellers or companies that are diving into ABM with LinkedIn?
I was thinking about this, thinking about it a lot over the course of the last few months. It's definitely a B2B marketing strategy that I'm seeing take off a lot more as the months go by. We're having more conversations around it. We're hearing more questions around it. And obviously, our product team are thinking about ways that we can become more astute in this kind of strategy and try to be the leaders as it comes to ABM marketing. So for those who are, I think, new to it, I think there's some kind of misconceptions about what it can be used for, when it can be used. So at LinkedIn, we've got the solutions to really help it be successful through all gamuts of the market of all your marketing objectives. So if you're looking to acquire new business, expand business within your current portfolio, or retain, if executed effectively, ABM can be impactful across all three of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like tips and tricks of what I would recommend for companies who are looking to deploy a successful ABM campaign, what we typically see is that this is more often than not driven from a strong relationship between sales and marketing. I think that
Mm-hmm.
cohesiveness can result in a
Yep.
much stronger, proficient ABM campaign because there's a lot of data that your sales team have about who the right customers are, what they look like from a profile perspective that can really help fuel the ABM campaign. The second thing I would say is assessing the data that you have. Is it
Mm-hmm.
first party, second party, third party? They all present their own benefits, but obviously you want to ensure that the quality is there as well. So for example, if it's a first party data that you're getting from your CRM, how recent is it? It's likely that some of the fields are no longer relevant or accurate. So quality is key here, right? And then I would say the third piece of this is identifying the right customer. So some tips and tricks I would say is go back and take a look at who are some of the companies that you've recently closed or get deep in your sales cycle. What are some consistent characteristics that you can find between these customers? Then how do you create ABM lists that look like those consumers, right? In terms of
Mm-hmm.
the verticals, the companies they work for, the company size, their job title. That would be another tip and trick that I would leverage with ABM. Another thing I would say when we're speaking about this more and more at LinkedIn, it's about how do you understand the full buying committee and then the
Oh,
pool
yeah.
that influences buying decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think and we can be forgiven for always wanting to go to the decision maker, but I think the world of sales is getting a little bit more complex, and I think more people in the hierarchy are having the influence over some of those decisions. I can speak to a real life example. So we're consistently adding new tools and thinking about new tools that would better my team. So we just rolled out a video creation tool whose name I will not drop. But that took, myself and my manager really identifying what those benefits would be and then selling those benefits up the chain. So
Yeah.
I feel like identifying some of those frontline managers, and in some cases, depending on what your product is, those senior ICs can really help influence and drive a purchase decision down the line. And then, obviously, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I love that because I think leadership teams are really catching on. Like they need buy-in from the teams, like the people that are actually going to be using tools and systems in order to like make that purchase. Because having just something pushed from the top down is not usually successful. You need buy-in from everybody.
Yep.
So it's super important to not just hit the decision maker, but even the teams that are going to be implementing that tool.
100%. If you can have as you put it, the team that's going to be implementing kind of go to market for your product, I think the likelihood to succeed with the ultimate decision maker is going to be higher, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Now it might be a longer sales cycle, and you're gonna have to be open to deploying more dollars in the influence bucket versus always going for the decision maker. But I think longer term, the success of that is going to be worth the initial investment.
Absolutely. One of the things too that I think has been a struggle, especially since 2020, is taking that cold lead and even making it a warm lead. And it just feels like that's something that organizations are struggling with a lot today. So like, what are some suggestions you have like for sellers and organizations, businesses to get through like that insincere spam wall to actually have a conversation with a cold lead?
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I think something that every sales manager, every salesperson, everyone involved in sales or account management has faced in some degree over the past 12 months. And maybe this kind of new way of sales is here for long term, right? As work from home becomes more consistent. But a couple of things that come to my mind is giving more than asking. I think in years gone by, you could reach out to a cold lead. And if you're with a reputable brand that is selling a service that this prospect may likely need, the chances is you get that meeting.
Yep.
That's in a world when people aren't time starved or balancing a complex work from home environment. I typically lead in every team meeting I have, I always speak about one analogy as we talk about kind of prospecting and outreach. And it's, does your email make your prospect want to meet with you or whatever outreach mechanism you're using over playing Lego with their kids? And it's a real life balance that we're trying to face, right? I mean, my kids are home Monday, Friday, they're shouting dad downstairs as I work in the basement. They want me to help them color. And if there's something on my calendar that I can kind of deprioritize for 15 minutes and go ahead and help keep my kid kind of occupied and entertained, I'm going to go and do that, right?
For sure.
So I would encourage anyone who's facing this battle right now is to lead with insights, make it about the buyer, not about your brand or your product, right? And try to understand, where are your buyers or your prospects at in this new world? Where are they spending the most of their time? For many, I feel like email has become the new office. It's kind of a place where you don't want to be after 5 o'clock anymore. It's true, right? So
it is so true.
So I think about finding other ways to kind of engage with these potential buyers or these people that you're trying to schedule meetings with, whether that's using tools like video to get creative with your outreach, whether that's using platforms like LinkedIn, with your sales navigator, is it email? We've got to get a little bit more creative with, I think, our method of outreach and the content in our outreach too, in order to be impactful. But my biggest nugget here is there a valid business reason as to why this person should meet with you? And should they say no to playing Lego with their kids over meeting with you, right? And if the answer to that question is yes, I think you stand a better chance of landing that meeting.
Oh, I love that. And, right now it's not just budgets that we're fighting for, it's time and attention. And it's easier than ever to be distracted at home. I mean, like you talk about kids, dogs, the dishes or laundry. There's so many things that people can get distracted by. So I absolutely love that.
Last year when this first came up, right, I noticed that my team were consistently setting 30-minute meetings, right? And I don't think that was out of need. I think it was out of habit. So one thing I challenge my team to do is just to help build, that reputation and that credibility and that trust, and just be compassionate about the time that we're living in. Is if you have a 30-minute meeting, could you give that customer 10 minutes back to go for a walk, let the dogs out, play with their kids, whatever that commitment is they've got outside of the screen, give that time back. I'm sure you can be a little bit more efficient and effective with your time and get that 30-minute meeting down to 18, 20. We all know we could all use that and that little break. So if you find time to do that, then I would certainly recommend that too.
I love that. And it's actually really refreshing to hear you say that, because you work at a company where you probably want people more on the screen. But on the other hand, you want it to be impactful and you want them to value it, not necessarily begrudge the time that they're spending. So I really like that.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you make a good point, right? It's like if I'm speaking with a customer and they know that every time they get on the phone with Dan, it's going to take 40 minutes instead of the 30, then the likelihood to them to push our future meeting might be higher, right?
For sure.
But if they know that when they get on with Dan, it might be 22, it might be 20 minutes, and they're going to get some time back, they might want to meet with me more. It's these little things I think can just build incredible trust. And if someone did that to me, I know I would feel extremely beneficial, right? So try setting shorter meetings just to give respect to people's time as well.
Yeah, being courteous.
Yeah.
And one of the things, like, even to be able to use the LinkedIn platform in an efficient way is really having a personal brand, like showing up on LinkedIn, being there. And there can be mistakes that maybe rookies make when they're using the LinkedIn platform, or things that maybe people do that maybe would put a lead off or not represent themselves in the best way. So, like, what are some mistakes that you think people make when they're using LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're thinking about, I want to have a personal brand on LinkedIn, the likelihood is you already have one, but you don't know it, right? So I think that's the first question you got to ask yourself, like, what is my brand right now? And I'm all over asking people for that feedback, right? Like, what is the perception of me? And often the perception is a reality, right? So I think understanding that of what your brand currently is, and asking yourself, what do you want your brand to be? That would be the first place where I would start if I was really going to use LinkedIn as a place to grow my professional and personal brand.
Yeah, I
and I will be thinking about with my audience that I'm trying to build this brand in front of, like, what is the actions that I want them to take, right? What is the desired action? And in the same vein of audiences, do I really understand who my audience is, right? If I'm selling in my space to marketers, right, but my content is often not relevant to the verbiage and the lingo that marketers like, if it's not impactful and insightful to them, it's all about sales and how to drive more deals, I'm probably turning the audience off a little bit, right? So making sure that you tailor your message to the audience that you have, and it's with insights and actions that you want the audience to take. And you're going to run into some, I think, challenges with this, because you might realize that the audience that you thought you had isn't the audience that you actually have. I might realize that the content that you're putting out there is not as impactful as as you once thought it could be. I was having this conversation with a colleague of mine just a bit ago, and he's very good with his brand on LinkedIn, and is someone I look up to a lot for kind of advising me and for tips and tricks. One thing that he does a really good job of with his brand is he will speak to real life customer situations that he knows will impact future or potential prospects, right? That helps his brand. So if he has a good conversation with Amanda from Gannett or whatever company that might be, if he knows he's got 15, 20, 25 other prospects who he's speaking with on platform or trying to speak to on platform, and something from that conversation could benefit them, share that, amplify it, tag the person from the company where the story comes from, and create some real life scenarios that your prospective audience can relate to. I think that will create more value.
One of the things I keep hearing you talk about is just creating value and providing value. And I follow a lot of different people on LinkedIn, and some of them are friends, some of them are colleagues, or just people I've known for a while. And I personally try to follow the 80-20 rule, and I might even be like more like 95-5, where I try to provide valuable content in everything that I put out. And I try not to ask a lot from my audience, because you're constantly asking for things, people are going to get put off by it. And I think that's a huge part of a personal brand. And you talked about, with ABM, and even with getting past, turning a cold lead into a warm lead, like, you have to provide value, you have to show up. And I think a lot of people miss the boat, and they just think that LinkedIn is a place for them to like sell their product on every single post or sell their service. Like, it's not. Like, provide value to the people that are listening to you, because otherwise you're going to turn them off and they're going to unfollow you or whatever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as you mentioned ABM, I was thinking about, like, another thing that I would recommend in ABM is, if you've got the kind of buying committee, people who can influence decision makers as part of your ABM tool, the message is going to look drastically different to them, right? So that's another part of providing value, is understanding kind of where the audience is in their buying journey for your product, where they're at in your sphere of influence, and tailoring your content to that. And you talk about rules, and I think being more informative, especially in times like this versus transactional, is the way to go. To your point, if you're super transactional, but the audience isn't primed for it, then your results and your kind of ROI will reflect that, right? So I would certainly say lean more to that informative versus transactional content, and know where the audience is, and that'll steer you which way to go.
Yeah, 100% agree. You know, it's been really fun to talk with you about where we're at now and how communication has changed recently, maybe even in the past like a year or so. But where do you think, like looking down, you know, or looking forward into the future, what are some ways that you think communication, especially in the sales world, will change?
You know, it's a difficult question, because I think if you'd have asked me this question, you know, just 13 months ago, I'd have been vastly wrong with the prediction, right? If this last 12 months has taught me anything, it's nobody can predict the future of sales or communication or anything of the sort. But I'll take a swing at it. It's a conversation I was having with a colleague of mine. It was just what the future of sales looks like, and I feel like a buyer first sales process is becoming more prevalent, right? I think the buyers, will hold more of the power as sales evolves, and they might be in a position where they start selecting the people that they consume goods from versus us going out and having a voice to them, right? So you look at a lot of sites out there now that are all about promoting options within certain services. You can think of Yelps from like a B2C world, and there's obviously B2B versions of that. I can see that world kind of taking over or growing more in the future. I also think about like tools that have become more important over the past 12 months to be impactful in sales, and I think will shape the way that we go forward, right? Things like video messaging, like video, as we've mentioned, tools that allow us to operate at scale, tools that allow us to amplify our efficiencies that we didn't need, or we weren't aware that we needed to improve upon prior. So I think the world's going to become a little bit more kind of tech driven in the sales cycle. I think companies are going to be looking with consistency to bring in more scalable, efficient driving tools as we kind of look at this new way in sales. I know that wasn't a very profound answer, because I think it's very unpredictable. But I think if the last year taught us anything, there's going to be a lot more tools, systems, tech, and options allow us to kind of amplify, accelerate, and drive more efficiency in the sales cycle.
Yeah, well, it actually really reminds me of our conversation that we had a few weeks ago, where, you know, antiquated sellers or antiquated organizations that like just can't wait to get back to the way things were, like they're not going to be able to survive, because this is their new selling environment. And I think it's really given buyers the power to go beyond their geography, to have video, you know, sales calls instead of in-person sales calls. It's opened up their marketplace a lot. And if you're not willing to adjust and to incorporate automation or video technology, like you're gonna get lost in the dust.
I think a lot of that technology comes in as well. Is like, how do you currently act with kind of the nurturing side of the business as well, right? I think a lot of what we've spoken about today is kind of acquiring new customers via ABM and systems that we can use to get there. But you can't lose sight of your current customers, right? Like, how do you adapt to their needs in this current environment? And that comes with, you know, growing from internal, but also retaining as well. So I think sales as a whole, when you look at, I think we often think about it as like an acquisition tool. It's also a retention tool as well. So I think that's something that we'll see a lot more emphasis on in the future. And I don't think that's too heavily tech driven now, but I think it will become more tech driven as time goes by.
Yeah, I think so too. Cool. Well, Danny, thank you so much for talking today. It was good to see you and to learn. I feel like I learned a lot in this call. Just, you know, tips and tricks and suggestions. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah.